We can take a minute or two. We'd love to hear where you're calling in from. You can just put this in the chat. So where you're calling in from and how you heard about this event. So as we're waiting another moment or so, again, you can put in the chat, where are you calling in from? How did you hear about this event? We'd love to hear more about you. And the sign in for the raffle is in the chat as well. In order to be entered in the raffle, you do need to fill out that sign in form. All right. So we have someone from Philly. Instagram, that might be shout out to Philly Goes to College if you saw that on Instagram. Shout out to parent of Heights and Stepping Stone student. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Good evening. Thank you, everybody. Give it just another minute or so. So again, the names for the raffle will be pulled from the sign-in form, and you will need to have the form filled out by the end of the question and answer session, and the raffle will take place at the end of the event. Also, you do need to be in Philadelphia in order to pick up the computer. So shout out to anyone who wants CLS wisdom from Georgia or from Florida. Everyone is welcome, but only folks in Philadelphia who can pick up the computer in Philadelphia are can do the raffle. So just keep in mind you do need to pick up that computer in Philadelphia. Okay. In the interest of time, and I'll keep dropping that form in the chat, I would like to introduce our guests from Community Legal Services. And Carrie Smith, if you could just introduce yourself in a moment. Community Legal Services has been doing amazing work understanding the complexities of where we're at with student loans and making that information accessible to the public. So, Carrie, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Go ahead and take it away.
Great, thanks so much. Yes, I'm Carrie. I'm an attorney with Community Legal Services, or CLS, and I'm joined by my colleague, CLS paralegal Sophia Diddy and CLS attorney Tom Ferrant. For those of you who don't know, CLS provides free civil legal services on really a range of issues, employment, housing, public benefits. The three of us work in CLS's Home Ownership and Consumer Rights Unit. H-Crew, as we call ourselves, where part of our work is supporting student loan borrowers. So helping people get out of default, get into affordable payment plans, get their loans discharged, and when needed, defend them in lawsuits if they're brought by private lenders or schools that are trying to collect tuition debt. So a lot of our work ends up being with borrowers who are already in crisis, like when something's gone wrong with their student loans. But we know that higher education, of course, like it opens doors, right? It's a pathway to opportunity. It's a pathway to economic mobility. And so our goal today is to help you understand all the changes that are happening in student loan law right now so you can kind of navigate those systems better. You can make sure that education is like a bridge to a better future and not an anchor that's kind of holding you down because of student loan debt. So here's what we're going to cover today on the slide. We're going to start with a brief overview of student loans and walk through some key policy updates. Spoiler alert, there's new limits on the amount of loans that parents can borrow for their kids' education, and also new limits for graduate and professional students. They will no longer be able to borrow the full cost of attendance. So we're going to get into that. There's also new repayment plans. We're going to cover those and talk about those and give you tips for navigating repayment of student loans, cover the basics of loan forgiveness programs. And if you're one of the many who have student loans who are in default, you're not alone, and we'll walk you through steps you can take to get your loans back on track. We're going to do our best to answer questions along the way. We're not going to be able to provide specific legal advice that's tailored to your specific situation, but we'll cover the basics and highlight some issues and get you the resources you need for help. So that's a lot to cover. So before we dive in, just a little bit of context. Next slide, please. We are in the midst of what I would call a student loan crisis, right? There's 45 million Americans who have $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, and nearly 25% are in default. Sadly, a lot of people have that debt, but don't actually have the degree. Nearly 40% of student loan borrowers did not finish their undergraduate education. And this is not just a young person's issue. In Pennsylvania, 1 in 5 borrowers are over 50. Next slide, please. The student loans that we're going to focus on today are federal student loans. Those are 92% of student loans. They're loans that are guaranteed by the federal government. On this little pie chart here, the light blue pie slice, that is private student loans. They're offered by private lenders for education. We'll talk more about this in the presentation, but private student loans don't have the same kind of repayment plans and forgiveness programs that we'll be talking about today. Our focus is on federal student loans. Next slide. Beyond the sheer volume of debt, the student loan system itself is really complicated. It's been often mismanaged, leaving a lot of borrowers without access to affordable payment plans that they're entitled to. And we've seen that in our own work. Just a quick example, many CLS clients qualify for income-driven repayment plans with monthly payment plans, payments that are as low as $0. And they're entitled to loan forgiveness after 20 or 25 years of paying in those income-driven plans. But before the pandemic, we would routinely see clients coming to us and their Social Security benefits they needed for rent and or their mortgage or medication and food, they're being garnished because they were in default. And these are people who should have been in a $0 payment plan. Just truly troubling, and they were not alone. A study of income-driven repayment forgiveness program found that about 2 million people have been paying their loans in these programs for 20 years, but only 157 had been forgiven. It turns out like some of the student loan servicers weren't even keeping track of payments. That's just crazy, outrageous stuff. Next slide, please. So in the recent years, there's been a lot of efforts to fix those problems, like giving people retroactive credit and waivers, coming up with like more affordable payment plans, as well as loan forgiveness. But many of those changes are now being challenged or rolled back, creating a lot of confusion. Next slide. So we have kind of today what I would call like a perfect storm. There's been all these lawsuits, all these policy changes that have kind of left a lot of borrowers in limbo. For example, the SAVE plan, which is the most affordable repayment plan, that was challenged, and the court put a hold on the program while it was reviewing the case and before a decision could be made. So for almost 2 years now, any student loan borrower in the SAVE plan has been in a forbearance. So there's no payments due, but the people in those plans are not getting any credits towards loan forgiveness. So we've got right now 7 million student loan borrowers who are in forbearance because of that. And that lawsuit also created sort of rippling effects. The Department of Education told loan servicers not to process applications for income-driven repayment plans. So now there's this huge backlog of applications. So all of this change is happening just as like student loan payments have started again, right? There was a 5-year pause during the pandemic. We're now seeing involuntary collections will be rolling out soon as well. So there's really a lot at stake, a lot of moving pieces. And so our goal today is to help make sense of that. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia to talk about a new law, the so-called Big Bill, and that made some sweeping changes to student loans. Sophia?
Thank you, Carrie, for setting us up and talking a little bit about how this perfect storm is created. So, today we're going to be focusing on the One Big Beautiful Bill. And what this bill really does is it brings big adjustments for student loan borrowers. So, here's everything that the OBBBA does for student loans, but we're really only going to be focusing on the first three today. And what that does is it sets new loan borrowing limits, changes repayment options for current and future borrowers, and it also changes the eligibility for income-driven repayment plans for Parent Plus loans. And there's a lot of other stuff it does, but that's really what we're going to be focusing on today. So this is the new aid reality that starts July 1st, 2026 is when these borrowing limits start and go into effect. So if you're borrowing for this fall, you are going to have dramatic borrowing limits. If you are an undergraduate student, undergraduate students can borrow, and there's different kinds of loans they can borrow, subsidized and unsubsidized loans. But what you really need to know and where the changes really are for Parent Plus loans and for graduate students. Parent Plus loans are loans that parents take out for a child's education. And what parents really need to know is that they will no longer be able to finance this education only in the federal system. There are drastic limits to Parent Plus loans now with an annual limit of $20,000 and a lifetime limit of $65,000 per child. And this is for anyone who is borrowing again after July 1st, 2026. If you are a graduate student, there are also huge loan limits here. You will not be able to finance your entire graduate education within the federal system. There are limits here you can see on the slide, and Graduate Plus loans are going to no longer be an option. Both Parent Plus and Graduate Plus loans allowed borrowers to borrow up to the cost of attendance, and borrowers are now not going to be able to borrow up to the cost of attendance, and they are subject to these new loan limits, which means you need to start financial planning early. Here you can see how these limits really go into effect. So again, the first column, you can see the year. For dependent undergraduate students, no changes there. This is the max that they can borrow. But with these Parent Plus limits, you'll see that the combined maximum amount that a parent and student can now take out per year is drastically capped. And that is going to have huge changes. So what do these limits really mean? Like, you can't finance everything in the federal system. What does that mean? That means that this private loan slice of the pie is going to get much bigger. Okay, so why should you care about that? Because private loans are way different than federal loans. They offer fewer protections and relief programs. They usually require a cosigner. The interest can be very high, and default can occur much quicker after just one missed payment. Whereas federal student loans have offered traditionally more flexible repayment options and more protections for borrowers. But borrowers are now going to have to look elsewhere outside of the federal system to finance their education. So that's just setting the lay of the land there. So again, there are huge limits for Parent Plus borrowers and for graduate students. So if you're a parent looking to finance your child's education, you are not going to be able to only do that in the federal system. You are going to have to look elsewhere. The OBBBA also changes both current borrowers and future borrowers' repayment options. And we'll talk a little bit about these repayment plans as well. So currently, there are two ways to think about repayment plans. There are fixed repayment plans and income-driven repayment plans, and those are the two buckets. Fixed repayment plans are kind of like a car payment or a mortgage, where they are based on the total amount of debt. They often have more predictable payments, and it's based off of they're on like a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year payment schedule, kind of like a car payment. Whereas income-driven repayment plans are based on your income. And after making payments for a certain number of years, the rest of the balance is forgiven. There are currently a lot of different income-driven repayment plans offered. So IDR is income-driven repayment, and all of these other alphabet soup programs like income-based repayment, IBR, Payee, ICR Save, they're all types of income-driven repayment plans. Under the OBBBA, there are changes to both these kinds of repayment plans. So we'll see that there's the new tiered standard plan, which is going to be the only fixed repayment plan option for student and Parent Plus borrowers after July 1st. And most notably, for income-driven repayment plans, it's going to the OBBBA and Save, ICR, and Payee, and there's going to be a new income-driven repayment plan called RAP, which is going to be the only income-driven repayment plan for people who borrow after July 1st. So let's take a look now at this new tiered standard plan. So this new tiered standard plan, again, is a fixed repayment plan, and this is for loans dispersed on or after July 1st. Again, it kind of functions like a car payment, where the payments are based on the total amount borrowed and a repayment period, and you can see how it's kind of broken up there. These payments are not based on your income, and this payment plan is also not eligible for forgiveness programs like public service loan forgiveness or income-driven repayment forgiveness. And this is going to be the only option for Parent Plus borrowers who take out loans after July 1st of this year. This is the new repayment assistance plan, which is the new income-driven repayment plan. Under RAP, payments are as low as $10, which is a change. They currently under income-driven repayment plans, they can be as low as $0. So under here, you have the minimum payment of $10, but there's also no maximum payment amount. So you'll see on this scale here, like the highest payment, if you're making more than $100,000 a year, your student loan payment can be upwards of $833 a month. Under RAP, there's forgiveness after 30 years, which is longer than current income-driven repayment plan forgiveness. But the RAP plan is eligible for that after 30 years of payments, and it's also eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Majorly here, just no $0 payments and no payment cap. If you are an existing borrower, your student loan repayment options are changing. You'll continue to have access to income-based repayment, but Payee and ICR and Save are all ending, and with Save ending way quicker than Payee and ICR. And you can see here what to do if you're an existing student borrower. But for new borrowers, this is for borrowers with any new loans after July 1st, 2026. You should know that you will only have two options for repayment. You will only have those two new repayment assistance plan, the RAP plan and the standard plan, if you are a new borrower, if you take out any loans after July 1st, 2026. This includes people who consolidate after July 1st, 2026. So you're only going to have options for those two repayment plans. The only exception to this is if you are a Parent Plus borrower, you can pay your Parent Plus loans in a different plan. You can pay your Parent Plus loans in the new tiered standard plan, and you could pay your own loans in the RAP plan. But otherwise, all of your loans must be in the same repayment plan. And here you can see why this really matters. So under the current plans, under IBR, your payments, so let's say someone has $45,000 of adjusted gross income. Under RAP, their payments could be $100. If they have two dependents, there's a payment deduction for dependents. And under IBR, there's payments of like $111 and $166, which doesn't seem like the differences are too big there. But as soon as you hit around the $75,000 mark, the difference between RAP and income-based repayment is very drastic. So you can see how those payment calculations are made there. So this is huge for for people in repaying their student loans. If you consolidate or take out any new loans after July 1st, you will only have access to RAP and the new tiered standard plan. If you are a Parent Plus borrower, you should take action to maintain access to affordable payments and maintain access to income-driven repayment. So if you are a Parent Plus borrower and you want to keep your payments as low as possible, you must consolidate your loans now, because the consolidation must be complete before July 1st, 2026. And then you should enroll in ICR, make at least one payment in ICR before it sunsets, and then you can switch to IBR. And that is how you can ensure that you will maintain access to low monthly payments. This slide, again, is aimed at Parent Plus borrowers. So if you're a parent who has borrowed money for your child's education, or if you are a parent who is borrowing money for your child's education, you can really dig into this slide and figure out what you need to do in order to make sure that you will maintain access to income-driven repayment, income-driven repayment forgiveness, and public service loan forgiveness, is if that's something that you're pursuing. So here's an example that really puts this all into place. So let's say Mike and Mary have a junior in college, Mark. Mary has taken out $50,000 in Parent Plus loans to help pay for Mark's education. Mary works for the city and is planning to remain there for another 15 years. She had planned to borrow another $20,000 in Parent Plus loans for Mark's senior year. And here are the questions. Will she be able to take out another $20,000 in Parent Plus loans under the new limits? So again, under the new borrowing limits, it's $20,000 a year with a $65,000 lifetime limit per child. So Mary's already taken out $50,000, but it's a little bit of a trick question here, because Mary is a legacy borrower. If she's already borrowed money for Mark's education, Parent Plus borrowers can continue to borrow up to the cost of attendance for another 3 years. So she will be able to take out another $20,000, but warning, she will have very limited payment options. So the next question, if she takes out this $20,000, will she be able to repay the total $70,000 under an income-driven repayment plan so she can qualify for public service loan forgiveness? The answer is no. So Parent Plus borrowers who take out loans on or after July 1st, 2026, even if they already have Parent Plus loans, are only going to have access to the new tiered standard plan. They will not have access to income-driven repayment plans. They will not have access to income-driven repayment forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness, because they don't have access to income-driven repayment plans. So Mary could continue to borrow, but she will have to pay under the new standard plan, which has very high payments. Okay, again, just so you really get it in your head, if you are a Parent Plus borrower and you take out loans on or after July 1st, 2026, you will not have access to any income-driven repayment plans, and therefore will not have access to income-driven repayment forgiveness. And there's also no path for public service loan forgiveness or income-driven repayment forgiveness. So you're going to be paying that entire balance like you would be paying a car loan or a mortgage, with that repayment scale with the total amount, with the repayment period of 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Payments are not going to be based on your income. Here's a fact sheet, or not really a fact sheet, but some frequently asked questions for different types of student loan borrowers that you can look at after the slides are sent out. I'm going to take a brief moment here to see if there are any questions in the chat. Carrie, is there anything that you want to address?
We haven't had any questions in the chat.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I thought I just wasn't
super
seeing
clear.
them. Okay, perfect.
Or people are overwhelmed, or both are true, actually.
Or all of the above. I know it's a lot of information. And that's just what the OBBBA set out for student loans. So if you are thinking about borrowing loans, keep or taking out loans, keep in mind those limits and what that means for your repayment options. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and briefly talk about some resources for current student loan borrowers. So a lot of people like, how do you figure out what loans I have? So a lot of people might not even know the type of loans that they have or their loan status. You can find this information on studentaid.gov. Here's information on where to go on studentaid.gov. This is a good resource if you have to switch repayment plans or if you're thinking about borrowing. It's also helpful to think about how you're going to approach repayment. And there's generally 3 different strategies there. This is a good resource for current, future, really anyone, any borrower or anyone who has borrowed to think about what might be your repayment strategy. And that can sometimes change over time. Another FAQ slide. Will be a good resource to look at after the slides are sent out. With these changes, what should you do if you are in these different situations? And another crucial thing you should know is that your tax filing status can also impact your payments under income-driven repayment plans. And I just wanted to flag this because we're in this tax season. So depending on how you file your taxes, your payments can go up, can go down. You might want to consider that when you're filing your taxes and how you file your taxes. So with that, I'm going to nope, no, I'm not. I'm going to do one more slide and then I'm going to turn it over to Tom Ferrant. This last resource slide talks about different kinds of student loan discharges. There's public service loan forgiveness, which forgives the balance of a loan after 10 years of qualifying payments while working for either a nonprofit or a government employer. There's income-driven repayment forgiveness, which cancels the remaining loan balance after 20 to 30 years of repayment. There's total and permanent disability discharges for borrowers who can no longer have substantial gainful employment. And you can get like VA certification, Social Security documentation, or a medical professional can certify that. And then these bottom discharges are for borrowers who like attended schools that may have closed, programs that might have closed, programs that may have defrauded them in some ways. And you can see also all of that, the brief overview of that information there. You should know too that right now public service loan forgiveness is tax-free. Income-driven repayment forgiveness, the remaining balance is now taxable if the discharge eligibility is after December 31st, 2025. So if you're eligible for the discharge in 2026, it's now taxable. And total and permanent disability discharges are tax-free at the federal level. Okay, and with that, now I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
All right. Hello, my name is Tom Ferrant. I'm a staff attorney with CLS. I'm going over default. So the bottom line up front is why you should care about default. So the federal government has really immense powers to collect these types of debts. It's quite different than any other types of debts you might run into. They can garnish your wages. They can even take parts of Social Security payments, which is unusual in debt collection contexts. And they can also seize tax returns. And they can do all of this without going to court. There's no statute of limitations. Currently, this is paused, but we know it's going to start again. And we saw it occur last year with people's tax returns, and it was very surprising to people, and it was extremely disruptive to people's lives because they were depending on these types of this money. And so you do not want to have this befall you with no notice. So if you could move to the next slide, please. All right, so the consequences of default. So after 270 days of non-payments, that's 9 months, your loans are at risk of default. And currently 25% of the student loan profiles are, defaulted. The debt becomes payable in full immediately once they're in default. Once you're in default, it triggers ineligibility for IDR plans, deferment, forbearance, and you can't earn credits towards any of these forgiveness programs. You're also ineligible to obtain or modify FHA-insured mortgages or similar programs. So these things extend beyond just the student loan context. Also, it's going to be recorded on your or reported on your credit reports. So it's going to damage your credit. And then you'll have no access to additional federal aid while you're in default. Like we said before, these defaulted loans are subject to involuntary collections. They're on pause now, but they're going to restart. And for tax refund intercepts, if you think that you're currently going to be affected by this, you can call the Treasury Offset Program. These types of, when they take your tax returns, it's called an offset. So you'll see the phone number right there. In case you believe this applies to you, you can call that to confirm. Social Security offsets, they can take 15% with a floor of 750 a month. And then administrative wage garnishment, they can take up to 15% of your disposable pay. So this stuff is very disruptive. Next slide, please. So how do you get out of this? So if you're in default, you can consolidate your loans out of default. You have a limited number of times to do this. And refer back to what Sophia said about consolidating loans, because we know that we have that July 1st date coming up, which is going to totally change everything. So you need to be very aware of the timing of when you're consolidating these things. Your other option is to rehabilitate the loans. That's a one-time option currently, but starting July 1st, you can do it twice. And to rehabilitate a loan, you're going to have to do either 9 payments over a 10-month period. That's either 15% of your discretionary income using the 150% poverty level, or an approved amount based on income and expenses. And there's a worksheet for calculating that. It's an OMB worksheet. So this slide here, I'm not going to go into it in depth. It's for you to peruse after we give out the slides, and you can look at the difference between loan consolidation and loan rehabilitation. There's also one other thing that I'd like to highlight that's not on the slides, and if you're at above that 270 and you haven't been placed into default yet, you can try to get a forbearance before it kicks into default. And that's something you should do. But you may need to consult with people such as lawyers in order to do that. So these are your options here. And without further ado, I will turn it over to, I believe, Sophia again to wrap it up.
So if you remember nothing else from this presentation, remember these four things. So if you have any existing Parent Plus loans and you want to access affordable monthly payments, you must start the consolidation ASAP, because the loans must be consolidated before July 1st of this year. If you have any existing student loans, you could lose your rights to affordable monthly payments if you take out any new loans, including consolidating after July 1st, 2026. If you are planning to take out federal student loans after July 1st of this year, you should know borrowing limits have changed. Parent Plus borrowers can no longer borrow up to the cost of attendance. This means you need to start financial planning early. And the last thing you should know, as Tom just mentioned, is if you're in default, the government could soon take money from your paycheck or your tax refund. You should take steps to get out of default. Here's some additional resources that you might want to check out. And here is how to get help at Community Legal Services. Again, we help low-income borrowers. Here's an idea of our income guidelines and some information on how to get help from CLS. And with that, I don't think that there are any other questions. Is that true?
There was a question in the chat, so I'll go ahead and review that. And then we'll see, although it looks like Carrie answered it, but just in case there's any elaboration on this, it said we could lose access to our IDR plan if we take out new loans. I am taking out loans for grad school in the fall. Does that mean I'll automatically get moved to the RAP or the tier plan? Is there any way I can take out loans for grad school without risking spiking my undergrad loan payments? So just wanted to see if there's
Yeah.
any. I know Carrie
I
answered, but
did I did a very brief question answer in the chat, but if you take out any new loan after July 1st, you will have two options for paying them back. The RAP plan, which is the new income driven repayment plan, or the tiered standard plan. You will lose access to, for example, income-based repayment. You'll have, if you want to do an income driven repayment plan, your only option will be RAP. Now that you should one of some of the resources that Sophia pointed out in the slide include EdCap, which is a great student borrowing counseling organization. They provide one-on-one services to New York residents, but student loans are federal, so it applies equally to you. They have some great repayment calculators where you can go onto their website, put in your student loan data, and get a sense of like what payment plan may be most affordable to you. If it turns out that RAP is going to be unaffordable to you, you might want to not borrow any more federal student loans after July 1st, so you lock in an opportunity to stay with IBR, and then think about other financing. If that's not an option for you, be aware that there are some benefits of the RAP plan. One of the things I don't think we were able to dig into is that there is an interest subsidy. So if you are in the RAP plan and your payment based on your income and family size does not cover the interest that is accruing on the loan, that will be covered. And there will also be some principal reductions. So the benefit of the RAP plan is there's not going to be sort of ballooning balances if your payment based on your income isn't covering the interest that's accruing. So much of this really depends on your unique financial circumstances. So it suggests with first starting with the repayment calculators and then maybe thinking about whether you want to do a consult with a student loan expert as well.
we have one more question in the chat that I'm going to elevate in a moment. I also wanted to just note that we've got about 5 more minutes to fill out that form if you haven't done so yet. Because if you need to fill out the form in order to have your name entered for the computer raffle. So we have a question here that says, I applied for student loan forgiveness and it looked like they just moved my loans to a different lender. Can you all assist with student loan forgiveness? What all can CLS help with?
Um, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm not sure which student loan forgiveness program you were applying for, but they can be tricky. And we are here to help for sure. So if you qualify for our services, and we just only represent low-income Philadelphians, you can apply for help with CLS. What we typically do is work with our clients to like download their whole federal student loan history, talk about their goals, what they've been doing for payments to try to figure out their best path forward. That may be loan forgiveness, it may be getting into an income-driven repayment plan, it may be applying for a discharge because you're unable to work. So there's lots of different options and we're happy to help. And the slides have our full intake information as well. And I think at the end of our session here, we're going to hear about some forthcoming resources if you don't qualify for services from CLS. You applied for public service loan forgiveness. Well, public service loan forgiveness is tricky. You've got to have the right kind of loan, be in the right payment plan, and be working for the right employer for the right amount of time. When that first went into effect in 2007, and so 10 years later, right, when people were getting ready and thinking, oh, they're going to get their loans forgiven, it turned out like 99% of people were getting rejected and not getting their loans forgiven because they had the wrong loan or the wrong payment plan and they had gotten bad advice about that. And so there was one of those fixes that I was talking about when we started the webinar. There was an effort to kind of retroactively give people credit who had been given like wrong information and advice about how they could be on their path for loan forgiveness. So there is a tracker on the Department of Ed's FSA website that you can see how much progress you've made for loan forgiveness. And we often work with clients to get them credits that they should have gotten but didn't. And we can help sort that out if you qualify for our services.
I added information about how to contact CLS in the
Thank you.
there. We have a question that says, are the repayment calculators linked on the slides that will be shared also?
I think we have a specific link to EdCap, their main website, and it's all about student loans. And so you can look on there. They have a breakdown of payment calculators. I don't think we have a specific link on our slides, but we can include that and modify that.
Okay. Anyone else feel free to drop questions in the chat or come off mute and ask a question for CLS. We'll give it another moment and then we're right on time. But I do want to open up some space for additional questions. We will be emailing out the slides to all participants after the event. So you can look out for that hopefully in the next week or so. And then also a recording of this event as well will be emailed out to participants. In a moment, we'll also hear from the Mayor's Office of Education, who are going to talk about some new initiatives from their office. But just wanted to open up some space for another moment in case any other questions occur to people, either in the chat or you can come off mute. And again, this is your last opportunity to fill out the sign-in form for that laptop raffle. Thanks so much for those questions. And now we'll turn to the Mayor's Office of Education. And then if any additional questions occur, we might have a moment for any additional questions that come to mind after the Mayor's Office explains their initiatives as well. So, yeah.
Great. There we go. Thanks so much for advancing the slide. Hi, my name is Sharon Ward. I am the Deputy Chief in the Mayor's Office of Education for Mayor Sherelle L. Parker here in the city of Philadelphia. The Mayor's Office of Education works to support quality education, affordable education, and access to career pathways for learners of starting in kindergarten all the way through adulthood. We work with K-12 schools, we work with trade schools, we work with community college, four-year institutions, and also we support the adult education program, digital literacy, and ESL. So you have heard a lot today about that the student loan landscape is changing, that the choices that you make now will impact your repayment costs, and they will impact your options. We really have two messages for you. One is that don't disengage, that this can seem overwhelming, but turning away from it is the worst thing you can do. Leaning into it is the best thing to do. And the second is that you are not alone. Mayor Parker is well aware of the impact of student loan debt on Philadelphians, and she wants to help. Let me tell you a little bit about how she's approaching this. About a year ago, research out of Harvard came to Philadelphia, and what we learned was that Philadelphia is dead last among 50 cities on measures of economic mobility. That means that Philadelphians have a harder time getting ahead economically and staying ahead than residents of other major cities in the United States. We know that college is a proven path toward economic mobility, but we also know that student loan debt can be a burden that makes economic mobility even harder. If you know Mayor Parker, she doesn't want to be last in anything, and so she has taken this on as a challenge. Next slide. So last week, the mayor introduced her third budget. It has a number of improvements across everything, all city programs, all city services. And her goal has been to make Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, and greenest big city in the nation with a focus on economic opportunity. But this year's budget is really doubling down on focus on economic opportunity and economic mobility. We're calling this our economic GPS with a focus on growth, prosperity, and security. Next slide, please. As part of this effort, the Mayor's Office of Education, let me tell you a little bit about this. You've heard a little bit about the large number of borrowers across the nation. Here in Philadelphia, we have more than 230,000 Philadelphians with student loan debt. About 14% of them are over the age of 65. So student loan debt can be a burden on individuals of all ages. Our initiative, we are launching a new initiative with two other entities in the city that we will to support student loan borrowers. We're really excited about this. The mayor had heard from a lot of people about concerns about the federal changes, concerns they have about the ability to support either individuals going to college or people who are trying to support their students' college attendance, and all the Philadelphians that have to pay back their loans. So we have partnered with the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer and the Office of Community and Economic Empowerment to launch this new initiative. So how are we going to be helping? First, we will be launching a new website in mid-April with resources and up-to-the-minute information. There's a lot of information out there, but we want to make sure that people have access to it, that you know what's happening, because the landscape is changing really quickly, and we want to make sure that you've got links to all of the resources that are out there. We'll be working with our partners on information sessions like this to help you navigate changes and pick plans that meet your needs. And we will be starting a program this summer that will provide phone assistance and individual counseling for urgent and difficult cases. What you have heard and what you know is that everyone's case is different. What we're hoping to do is to be able to direct people to the right place, to get the information they need, and to get there with the information they need to have productive conversations with their loan processors or to make the right choices. But for a lot of people who are either facing default or have particularly urgent or complex cases, we realize that they're going to need individual help, and we'll be working with our partners on that. And finally, we will be working to help individuals who are eligible for public service loan forgiveness, and that includes city employees, educators, and nonprofit employees. So we have an ambitious plan to really get into this and really help Philadelphians navigate this. The city of Philadelphia has loan forgiveness is a major benefit, and one that you should make sure that you do everything to be able to achieve. In the city of Philadelphia, our Office of Human Resources ran a program to support Philadelphia employees to secure loan forgiveness, and that resulted in about $140 million worth of loan forgiveness just for city employees, and that was just I think over a 3-year period. And what that means is people can buy houses. It means people can pay for their children's college education. It creates generational wealth. So this is really a high priority, and we want to make sure that individuals have access to that. So right now you can go to our website, you can find some basic information. We have fact sheets in multiple languages, and please follow us on social media and we'll give you updates about when we're launching all of our different programs. So remember, you are not alone with your student loans, and the city and our partners are all here to help. Thanks.
Thank you, Sharon. I just wanted to open up this space for another moment in case anybody had any questions in the chat or anyone wants to come off mute to ask some questions. And then, Sarah, do we have the raffle wheel on deck?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll do that in a moment as well. If the question was, when's the raffle? It'll be in a moment.
I
Uh, just
I was gonna say, Rachel, I had a question, and maybe I know there's one that just popped in the chat, but with more limited, with the borrower limits, especially for Parent Plus loans, are there any resources or suggestions for where people should go if they're like to make sure they're working with reputable loans in the private space? How should people navigate that? Because it's a little bit more, as you outlined so well, it's not quite as easy as saying, I'm going to do a federal loan and picking your repayment plan. How would people navigate making sure they're picking the right kind of or the best private loan that they could if they're outside that federal system?
It's a good question, and I'm not sure there's an easy answer for it. And hopefully, the mayor's office of education and our new initiative will help provide some additional resources. But I mean, I think right now the most important thing is that, as we kind of talked throughout this webinar, is making sure that you're taking on student loan debt that's manageable and that doesn't actually hold you back from all the benefits of economic mobility that a college degree should grant you. So I think right now, the city funds free financial empowerment counselors. It's like terrific financial counseling available all across the city. And I think that can serve an important role here in terms of thinking about what is my budget? What is my current budget? What's my expected budget when I graduate? And can if I borrow X amount and it costs Y dollars a month to pay back, does that fit in my expected budget? And if not, then I need an alternative plan, right? Because there's not income-driven repayment options with private student loans. With federal student loans, you can always choose an income, well, not always. If student borrowers can always choose an income-driven repayment plan, and that's based on your income and family size, that's going to be manageable. That's not true with private student loans. So I think the most important part is kind of figuring out whether the monthly debt burden is something that's manageable. And I think the existing budget counselors can help with that.
Thank you, Carrie. We have another question in the chat. Does the amount of money allocated for loan forgiveness differ in different states or cities, or is it the same all around?
I mean, generally, the forgiveness programs that we talked about today, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, total and permanent disability discharges, those are not tied to a specific pool of money that is giving you a grant to forgive your debt. Instead, it was a promise that was made by the federal government. When you were issued federal student loans, you were promised that if certain things happened, you could be entitled to certain programs, maybe getting your loans forgiven after working for 10 years for government and nonprofit and paying in an income-driven repayment plan. Maybe the promise was that if you became disabled and unable to work, you were no longer going to be burdened by your student loan debt, and that could be forgiven. So it's not that there's a pool of money that you're applying for a grant, but there's actually specific rules and regulations that you can kind of check on and see if you qualify for those forgiveness plans.
Okay. I just wanted to also note that It Takes a Village is an ongoing series of Zoom events for high school students, college students, and family members. And the partnership behind It Takes a Village is Philadelphia Education Fund, and particularly Philly Goes to College. And I'll go ahead and drop again our information in the chat in case you didn't catch it the first time around. So we are Philly Goes to College, Heights Philadelphia, and Campus Philly. So if you want to know anything about any of our organizations while we're doing the raffle, people might be a little distracted, but I'll be dropping in the chat information about our organizations. And if you haven't heard of our organizations before, what we're about and why we're here is supporting economic mobility through educational opportunities and financial aid opportunities for youth and for their families, both high school and college students across Philadelphia. So feel free to connect with Heights, Campus Philly, or Philly Goes to College, and I'll be dropping our information in the chat. So also, if you are the lucky winner of the raffle, please stay on after Sarah has announced your name. So in a moment, Sarah, who is a current Temple student about to graduate, is going to share her screen and spin the wheel.
All right.
Again,
Let's see.
please stay on so we can arrange the computer pickup if you want.
Yes. All right. Can everyone see me? Everyone see the wheel? All right. Here we go. All right. Congratulations, Najiba. Are you on?
Najiba,
Hi.
you got a
Woohoo!
computer.
Hello.
Claim your computer. Thank you to everybody. So if you could just stay on after everybody else exits, we'll do some logistics discussion about how you're going to get your computer. But thank you to our guests from CLS and from the Mayor's Office of Education. And we will be sending out the deck and the recording because I know that this was a lot of information to absorb. So folks can peruse this information on their own time. So if our raffle winner could please stay on. Thank you again to everybody for making time in your evening to spend time with us. And we hope that you'll join us for our next It Takes a Village event, which will be towards the end of April. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. We appreciate you.
Thank you.